When you think of articulated steam locomotives, a few come to mind: Challengers, Malleys, and maybe even C&O Alleghenies. But there's one locomotive that always comes to mind that was the railroader's dream with a symbol of excellence.
Of all the locomotives in the long history of the rails, one of the greatest was called Big Boy, a name by which the world knew an engine that closed a memorable era in Western railroading. It was the last of the giants.
If you haven't guessed it by now, in today's History of Steam Locomotives video, I will be talking about Union Pacific Big Boy number 4014, one of the biggest steam locomotives ever built and the most famous steam engine in the world. Let's jump right in because there is a lot to talk about with this locomotive. Chapter 1, 4014's Revenue Service Life. 4014 was built in November of 1941 at the Elko Locomotive Works in New York City as an order of new 4884 class Big Boy locomotives for the Union Pacific Railroad's transcontinental trackage between Cheyenne, Wyoming and Ogden, Utah. Originally, he and his class were meant to pull military equipment for other countries during World War II, but when the Japanese did a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the Big Boys were immediately sent to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and were put into service. Day after day, month after month, and year after year, the Big Boys kept moving freight trains up and down Echo Canyon and Sherman Hill until 1945, when the Americans won the war and peace was brought back. Chapter 2, the Diesel Locomotive Transition Era. After World War II ended, there was a shift in policy. Diesel locomotives were starting to replace steam engines in passenger service, and they were beginning to be proven successful in freight service too. Even though diesel locomotives were cheaper to operate, UP thought that a diesel locomotive can't match the power of a Big Boy. Later in 1949, GE built the gas turbine locomotive to replace the Big Boys. The gas turbine came in many different variants, but the most well-known one was the 8,500 horsepower turbine. Later, on July 21, 1959, 4014 made his last revenue run and was put into storage shortly thereafter. Chapter 3, 4014's Preservation Life. By the early 1960s, the Big Boys were withdrawn from UP service and most of them were getting cut up. However, 8 examples of the 25 Big Boys were saved and found their way to museums across the United States, and 4014 was one of them. Union Pacific donated 4014 to the Rail Giants Train Museum in Pomona, California. It was said that none of the Big Boys will ever run again, but that was about to change in the years to come. Chapter 4, Restoration Work on the Big Boy. In 2013, Ed Dickens and the Union Pacific Steam Team made a deal with the Rail Giants Train Museum to reacquire locomotive 4014 and restore it to operating condition. That same year, the locomotive was moved across the Fairplex parking lot onto Metrolink trackage and then to the UP West Colton Yard to begin its journey to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Once it reached Cheyenne, Wyoming, the UP steam crew started restoration work on 4014. Over the next 3 years, the UP steam crew replaced stay bolts and tube sheets inside the locomotive and even converted the locomotive from running on coal to number 5 oil. After several years of restoration and years of dreaming, the restoration of 4014 was complete. A fire was lit in his firebox on April 9th, 2019. As steam pressure rose, the locomotive had its valve settings adjusted and blew its whistle for the first time in several decades. On May 1st, 2019, the locomotive moved under its own steam for the first time in 60 years. On May 2nd, it made its first official test run out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Chapter 5, the 2019 excursion season. On May 4th, 2019, 4014 made its first excursion run with Union Pacific 844 from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Ogden, Utah to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad. But it wasn't over yet. In July 2019, 4014 did a full system-wide tour across the country to the Midwest and the southern U.S. Chapter 6, the 4014-2021 Excursion Tour. On the 29th of April 2020, the Union Pacific Railroad announced that they would cancel their 2020 excursions for the 4014, but it would eventually see a comeback in 2021. In June of 2021, the Union Pacific released their 4014 excursion route that would take place on August 5th. As exactly planned, the locomotive took to the rails again and toured a little bit of the parts of the Midwest and much of the parts of the Southeast. Chapter 7, the Future of 4014. As we all know, all of us rail fans love to see the 4014 operate, but some of us wonder, what is the future of this locomotive? Well, the future is that it will continue to operate steam locomotive excursions for years to come, for future generations to see and experience the steam in modern time. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a comment on this video about your opinion on the steam locomotive. Make sure to also leave a like and subscribe and click the bell to turn on my post notifications. And make sure to share with all your friends about my channel. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.